Speaking of which, let's close this up right and talk some football here on this Thursday. And you'll see this repeated on a Friday. Kyle Senra joins us to talk some running backs in fantasy football. Welcome, Kyle.
Hey, guys. Glad to be on. Thanks for having me.
Okay. When I said, Kyle, I want to bring you on Thursday mornings, and he asked me, okay, which fantasy list do you want to do first, since now all my redrafts are done? I said dealer's choice. So the hand he dealt me was full of spades. Running backs. Gonna rank our top 10 running backs, and Kyle's gonna give you the lowdown when the name comes up. Let's start at number 10, and we go down to Houston with Joe Mixon from the Houston Texans.
I mean, if you told me the news of, okay, Mixon would get cut and then not cut and traded, like that would have probably, from the Bengals, like that would really hurt him. Like, who would he land with? What type of offense? Probably ended up in one of the best landing spots that he could have gone if he was leaving the Bengals. The Houston Texans seem like they're almost just as potent of an offense as the Bengals are going to be this year. A lot of potential to have high-scoring games, not have drives end early. Like, he'll have good touchdown upside as well. And they really haven't done too much else at running back. They lost Devin Singletary, essentially replacing him with Joe Mixon. Damian Pierce still on the team, but they seem more excited about him as a kick returner than anything else. And then they took a late swing, I think it was a 5th round, maybe 6th round, on Jawar Jordan, who I like decently as a prospect, but it does seem like Mixon, like the key thing here is just opportunity, which was, again, what made him so great in fantasy in Cincinnati. He wasn't very efficient, but he was just getting a lot of touches. And he's not someone who gets injured all that often, so he can just handle, maybe not 350 carries, but certainly potentially upward of 300 carries. And again, in such a good offense, how many snaps he plays on third down as a pass catcher, that remains to be seen. The Bengals were kind of limiting that actually towards the end of his career. They just had to get Samaje Perine on third down. That just had to be a thing. Funny. That's another 2017 rookie running back Mixon in that class, same class as Perine. I feel like Mixon landed pretty well, enough that I'm still willing to rank him as a top 10, if not just inside the top 10, but he is my number 10.
We're getting started here. Let's go to New Orleans for number 9. Of course, you have Alvin Kamara.
Hey, look at that. Another 2017 running back. And guess what, folks? We're not done talking about them yet.
We're not.
I mean, Aaron Jones just missed the top 10 as well. So that would have been another 2017 guy. I mean, we knew it was such a great class. And it's every year seems to continue to amaze us how long these guys hang around. Points per game wise, Alvin Kamara finished as an RB1 last year, especially in full point PPR rankings. I would actually go even higher. Say he maybe should be RB7, maybe even 6. I kind of did this for neutral, like half PPR way to look at it. But regardless of the pass catching, Kamara still has good touchdown upside. He's been a great touchdown producer his whole career. And it's not like Derek Carr is going to come there and just magically, okay, I'm the one that's going to throw 50 touchdowns and nothing goes to Kamara. Jamal Williams, the previous year with Detroit, in 2022, it's such a great touchdown season. So everyone was wondering last year if that would eat into Kamara's work. No, I'm pretty sure Williams had 1 touchdown. So to me, Kamara is still the goal line back. So there's good pass catching upside, because we talk about the Texans not really doing much at running back. The Saints really didn't do anything at receiver. I mean, they cut Michael Thomas, and he's played the last 4 years. That basically is meaningless. Like, that doesn't really change very much. But they really haven't brought anyone in there. I know they're banking on Rashid Shaheed taking the step up in his 3rd year, and it looks like he is pretty trenched in as the wide receiver 2 on the team. But I still think Kamara is going to be second on the team in receptions and targets. He seems like he's locked in for that role, locked in for a good goal line role as well. Derek Carr, while not great, it's not like CJ Stroud, but good enough to at least have the offense operate and not fall apart every time. So that still means I think Kamara can actualize that touchdown upside. So I'm pretty excited to draft him.
To Baltimore we go for number 8. Big addition to our offense, and King Derrick Henry.
Yeah, and so this would be a good example of a guy that would, I think, jump Derrick Henry if we're talking full PPR relative to half PPR, because Henry, he's never really caught many passes his whole career, and he goes to a team that really won't throw a lot of passes, specifically not towards the running backs at all. So
Right.
Luckily, that doesn't affect Henry. It's all just about the amount of carries he can absorb and the immense touchdown upside. There is one misconception about Lamar Jackson as well. Everyone worries about, with rushing quarterbacks taking touchdowns away from the running backs. The truth
Mm-hmm.
is, Lamar Jackson does not run very much in the red zone. He's really good at throwing actually in the red zone, but
Yeah.
typically his touchdowns come from distance. So when it gets inside the 5 and close, if they're running the football, Derrick Henry's going to get every single touch. So crazy good touchdown upside here, more so than Kamara. So yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I like Derrick Henry in this new landing spot with the Ravens.
Speaking of new landing spots, let's go to Philadelphia for number 7 with Saquon Barkley.
Yeah, and again, the same thing I just said. This would be another guy where I might be a little concerned actually with Barkley with the pass catching, just because of where he ended up. Now he has traditionally been like part of his value, really a good chunk of his value is his ability to catch the ball. So, which is why some might even say this is too low for Barkley. I almost think this is like at the peak ceiling, though. I would even consider going lower with him, just because I'm concerned that he won't catch many passes with the Eagles. Not like he's used to seeing. To be fair, we saw it with DeAndre Swift. I think he played the most games he'd ever played in his career last season, and he had a career low in catches and targets. The Eagles, they don't really need to throw to the running back because they've got two excellent wide receivers that teams are going to, it'll be really hard to double team both Devontae Smith and AJ Brown, which means one of them will often be in one-on-one coverage, or they'll be against a zone, and they both do really well in that area. So most of Hurts' targets go to one of those two, and it's really if things break down, Hurts can still run. He can still also dump off to Dallas Goedert. I think Barkley's going to be great. Some really good touchdown upside there as well, although this is an example of a quarterback that will take the goal line work away because he's the one who runs a lot short yardage and in the red zone. That's where the touchdown upside could be hurt. But this is also the best offense Barkley's ever been on, the best offensive line Barkley's ever been on. So his ability to break off the long runs, which alongside his pass catching, those have been the two big things: his breakaway speed and the big play ability, and then the receptions. So those are the two main parts of his fantasy value over his career. So this could be a time to, while it might hurt in one area with the receptions, he might have some of his biggest play explosion rate this season that he has his whole career, at least probably since his rookie season when he came onto the scene. So could expect a great year for Barkley in that. So I still like him as a top 10 running back, while I am concerned with the role on the team.
At 6, let's go to Detroit. We find Jahmyr Gibbs.
So this really does look like a split backfield where David Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs got enough touches. But what we saw last year was and we actually saw this the previous season, there's so much touchdown upside for the running backs. And even if you split it between Gibbs and David Montgomery, that still leaves a lot for Jahmyr Gibbs. And I'm not really worried about his pass catching role because the Lions, much like a team we talked about, like the Texans not adding much to the running back room, the Lions really didn't do much to add to receiver at all this year. They've got Amon-Ra St. Brown, Sam Laporta. Those are locked in as the top two targets on the team. I'd expect Gibbs to be third on the team in pass catching. Jamison Williams really hasn't shown enough over his career to say that he's drawing targets at any significant rate. You might have Donovan Peoples-Jones as the wide receiver too. So that tells me that there's going to be a lot of reception chances for Jahmyr Gibbs. So the pass catching upside's there, the touchdown upside's there. It's a fantastic offense. And I'm Packers fans. I hate to admit that, but the Lions are pretty good, unfortunately. Yeah, I'm all in that. What Jahmyr Gibbs last year didn't seem like a fluke to me. He had a lot of touchdowns. I think he had 13. But based on his yards per game, you'd expect a double-digit touchdown season. So I don't think it was – you might not hit 13 like he did last year, but 11 I think is a reasonable projection for Gibbs in terms of touchdowns. And you get a double-digit touchdown guy that's expected to catch that many passes, I'm all in. So yeah, I love Gibbs.
All right, let's go down to Miami. Number 5, Devon Achane, the speedster from Texas A&M.
And we can talk about the rankings changes, full PPR to half PPR. If it was full point per reception, Gibbs would probably even be higher. Because with Achane, the reason I like him more in half PPR, in my touchdown projections, I think there's only one running back that truly has more touchdown upside than Achane. He showed incredible efficiency last year. He didn't play every game, but in the games he did play, his touchdowns per game and also the yards he was producing per game were quite impressive. We talk about Saquon Barkley's breakaway speed, explosive playability. I mean, that's all Achane. I loved him as a prospect last year. I thought he was one of the 3 best guys in the draft, and he certainly showcased that skill set. He had, I think, the biggest fantasy football week of any player last year.
Mhm.
Denver Broncos defense, very generous unit. Yeah, Achane, he's almost got the most upside of any running back on any given week. His floor might not be as safe as a lot of these other guys, but in a single quarterback league, you're talking the back end of the first round where I get an early second. I'm willing to take Achane there, and oftentimes you can get him in the second round. So you've already got your one established player. If you're going two running backs early, you get a really great safe running back in the first round and go right away with upside shot on Achane. I feel like I can build a good wide receiver room in the rest of the positions around that.
Yeah.
If you're going with an early receiver and you want to just, okay, I've got my safe early receiver, my RB1, I'm going to shoot for the moon on Achane. I think he also makes a lot of sense. So even more than Gibbs, I'm willing to go all in on Achane in 2024.
At number 4, we go to Indianapolis, Indiana, and we find Jonathan Taylor.
This top 4 tier, I really struggle with, especially 2 through 4, because I think those 3 guys, especially, you can rank them in any order. We've seen Jonathan Taylor be the RB1 overall in a season before. Now, he's got that upside. That was a season, though, let's be frank, where Christian McCaffrey, the reigning RB1 before that, was injured. So the threshold for what it took to be the RB1 in 2021 wasn't as high as we've seen necessarily in recent seasons. But he's still shown that capacity to be that 22 to 25 point per game player in full point per reception. So Taylor's shown that before. I think this Colts offense really will get their strength through the run game. Whether it's Anthony Richardson or Jonathan Taylor, I think there's a ton of touchdown upside for both on the ground. And the passing game will be not so much an afterthought, but it'll certainly play second fiddle to the run game. So I think even with Anthony Richardson there, I think there's enough rushing opportunities for Taylor that, to me, I'd still lock him in as a first round pick in single quarterback leagues and a second round pick in super flex leagues. And that's really where you get into this top 4. Those are the guys that are always going to go in that. Again, first round in 1 QB, second round in 2 QB.
Let's go to Atlanta for number 3, Bijan Robinson in the second year out of Texas.
Yeah, this is all about the promise. Last year didn't quite go as well as people expected. I mean, some people were drafting him in the first round of redraft leagues last year. It's the talent. It's a lot of people believe this is the best running back prospect we've ever seen, or certainly seen since probably Barkley, because that was a lot of hype when Barkley came out. And we didn't quite get it, but I think everyone has laid the blame on Arthur Smith. And now with the new changes in head coach and new offense coming in, the coaches, I think Zach Robinson's now the offense coordinator. He's talked about, seemingly not being a huge fan of splitting Bijan and Tyler Algier as much as the previous regime did. So I think we could really expect this breakout season from Bijan Robinson, all the promise he's delivered. Again, another guy I've projected for double-digit touchdowns. And it's again, go with the young prospects that you truly believe in. As much as I like Achane, as much as I like Gibbs, I really do believe Bijan's better, and I think this is the year he shows it.
We go down to our top 2, and we go to the Meadowlands for a little Breece Lightning and Breece Hall.
And so I've been doing a running back scouting with my methodology that I have been since that 2020 class, and that's the Jonathan Taylor, Clyde Edwards-Helaire class. Now I guess that's 5 seasons I've done it. The 3 highest scores are Bijan, Breece Hall, and the highest overall score is Ken Walker. I'm just a huge Ken Walker fan, but unfortunately the Seahawks aren't, because they let's add Jack Charbonnet there. Let's take away some. Why unfortunately not going to talk about Ken Walker in the top 10, but all to say, Breece Hall I think is almost as good as Bijan in terms of that level of a prospect. The one difference, though, is we've seen Bijan make difference-making production in the NFL and be that true potential RB1. I think if anyone's going to take the crown away from the guy who's at the top, I think Breece Hall has the best chance. And like a few other teams I mentioned, like specifically Alvin Kamara, I think it's a very similar situation where I think Breece Hall's locked in to be second on the team in targets, especially with Rodgers coming off the Achilles tear. I imagine he'll scramble less. So that means maybe a more abundance of dump-off opportunities to the running back. And I think Rodgers is okay with that, knowing that it's Breece Hall. This is an explosive pass catcher, probably the second best pass catcher on the team. So the dump-off isn't just like a sign of weakness or admitting defeat. It's this: we want to get this guy the ball. Kind of like he did with Aaron Jones, only to an even higher degree. He looked great coming off the ACL tear last year. So now that he's it's going to be like when September kicks off, it's going to be, I think, basically 23 months since the ACL tear. So at this point, I think we can expect Breece Hall to be back to 100%. And if he wasn't 100% last year, he still showed really well. The sky could be the limit for him, and he could have even better season this year. So I expect, unlike Kamara, though, he's going to be a lot more efficient on the ground.
Right.
And not just and have good touchdown upside, but also efficiency, yards per attempt, and the chance at explosive plays. He's kind of the best of all the worlds of archetypes we've talked about: the Kamara pass catcher, the Devon A-chain, and the Barkley explosiveness. I think Breece Hall's the guy that puts that all together, which is why he's my RB2 and my RB1 in Dynasty.
And at the top of the pile, we go to Northern California and find the person who I believe should have been the most valuable player last year, Run CMC, and Christian McCaffrey.
I mean, to be fair, I think he won a lot of most valuable fantasy player awards. So maybe showing the fantasy community knows more what's going on than the actual NFL media community.
Right.
But I mean, this is undeniable. You talk about the complete package. He has it all. The most touchdown upside of any of these running backs. He's got the most pass catching running upside of anyone. He has the single season record for receptions in a season. And he's got it on a team that, even though the 49ers have other talented running backs, they've shown they're going to rely on him and give him a lot of work. And unlike in Carolina, where they gave him every touch and he was the RB1 for fantasy, Carolina, a lot of those games where they were doing that, they weren't winning. And they were a bad team. The 49ers have proved they can win with that formula and get all the way to the Super Bowl, potentially even win it this year. So I expect them to continue because it didn't seem like McCaffrey was worn down in the Super Bowl. Like, oh, all the carries he got all the season that's the reason they lost that Super Bowl. I wouldn't say that at all. He did have the one fumble, not something that happens often. So I could see the 49ers just going back to, okay, we can trust him. He was durable. We've got a good offensive line to protect him as well. And they're still going to be willing to give him most of the touches, most of the third down work, most of the goal line carries. And that's a team that scores enough touchdowns and gets enough red zone opportunities, even if he doesn't get every goal line touch. If Elijah Mitchell or someone else, one of the other depth running backs, vultures a touchdown here or there, you still maybe get McCaffrey to have a 1 or 2 in a game. Whereas if a lead back gets vultured for a touchdown once or twice, that's usually it. Like, okay, those were their opportunities. They didn't get them. With McCaffrey, you can almost always count on the 49ers being in scoring position. So not only do I have him as the RB1, I think in single quarterback formats, he should be the first player off the board. Even in the Superflex 2 quarterback formats, he really is pushed up early into the the top 5 potentially, ahead of a lot of quarterbacks, which I would normally go with. But McCaffrey's just so safe and so much upside, and you rarely ever get that in a fantasy player that you feel great about. And I'm all in to run it back again with McCaffrey as the RB1.
Those are your fantasy football top 10 running backs. And it's from this man, Kyle Senra, who will join us every week with his rankings and all kinds of fantasy football talk here on the program. It's a joy to have you, my friend, each and every week. We've been doing this for a few years now. I hope to continue this relationship and our friendship for a very, very long time. Thank you, brother. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Snowman, and likewise.